Chag Sameach. I recently thought of an old friend, Rose. Rose grew up in Europe, and with incredible strength and a passion to live, she survived pogroms in her hometown in Poland. She survived Hitler and the Nazis, and then she survived Stalin. Rose used to tell me stories of her survival, about fighting with the partisans in the forest, and the time that they made an elaborate plan to acquire falsified documents to trick the Nazis. And then she told me the time following the war when she bribed a Soviet officer. When I met Rose 10 years ago, she still had a twinkle in her eye. But now, elderly and frail, her life had changed since her courageous youth. Now, this incredible woman was fighting a new enemy: loneliness. After her sister passed away, with no other friends or family left, and without the physical strength to leave her apartment, it wasn't unusual for Rose to sit in her apartment alone for weeks on end, without any company, without any contact. I used to visit Rose when I was a rabbinical student in New York. And every time I went to her apartment, she would open the door with tears in her eyes. She was always overwhelmed with sadness. And she would cry, "I am all alone in this world. Nobody cares for me. Nobody loves me. Why do I need to live in this misery? I hope that God will just take me already." Rose, a woman who had survived pogroms, Hitler, and Stalin, was dying of loneliness. Alone time is when we choose to be away from it all. We control it. But loneliness descends upon us, unwanted and unyielding. Loneliness isolates us not by choice, but by exclusion. And we all feel for Rose, in part, because we have all suffered loneliness. The very first time that our Bible recognizes that something is not good, the very first negative in the Bible is that Adam is all alone. God says, it's not good for man to be lonely. Lo tov heyot ha'adam livado. And God immediately rectifies the problem and creates Eve, a partner for Adam, someone for Adam to be with, someone to walk with, hand in hand across the vast new world. God's observation confirms a universal truth. It is not good to be lonely. Lo tov heyot ha'adam livado. We all need friends. We all need people who care about us. We all need love. We need connection. Just last week, I found myself amongst a group of our congregants in Boca Raton. We were all there for the Shiva of Chazan Morton Kula, the beloved father of our Cantor Kula. At the service in memory of his father, Cantor Kula shared something very beautiful. Cantor Kula explained that, like most of us, his father had doubts about God. But while his faith in God wavered, he never lost faith in humanity. He never lost faith in humanity, I imagine, because as a loving husband, as a caring father of 6, and as a leader of Jewish communities all over the country, throughout his life, he saw the enormous power when people connect, when people stand together. Look at our High Holiday liturgy. As we confront our most personal and private inadequacies, we call out our Father, our King, Avinu Malkeinu, and we confess we have sinned, Ashamnu. In these prayers, while we each consider our own shortcomings, the prayers are actually written in the plural. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. The message is clear. Even at our most vulnerable and introspective of moments, we stand together, connected in prayer, connected as a community. During Avinu Malkeinu, Cantor Kula's magnificent voice weaves together our individual calls to God into a community tapestry of prayer. Our individual voices come together and ascend to heaven in a communal chorus. I pray that our lives can mirror the beautiful balance achieved in the Avinu Malkeinu, the independent individual along with the connected community. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned because coming together, the type of community connection we experience during the Avinu Malkeinu is increasingly difficult to find. It is hard and challenging to find true, caring community. With a fear that the once bright fabric of American social society is fading, Robert Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone. In Bowling Alone, Putnam illustrates that in prior generations, Americans were joiners. The PTA, the Rotary Club, fraternal organizations, even bowling leagues. A generation ago, block parties were commonplace. Neighbors brought a new homeowner cookies, and children freely played in the streets. Now Americans are increasingly disconnected. We stay home. We mind our own business. We don't join. And because of safety, we only allow our kids to play outside if they're in a fenced-in backyard. Some of our seclusion is necessary. Some of it's a choice. Nevertheless, more and more Americans are bowling alone. And yet, sadly, we miss the connection. We spend our days surrounded by people, and yet many of us feel isolated and disconnected. We want people to care about us, and we want to share in friendship. Our lives today echo the message of our Bible from thousands of years ago. It is not good for man to be lonely. Lo tov heyota adam livado. As a new member of this community, only 1 year ago, we made it a year of listening. And with over a dozen meet and greets, together we gathered and we talked about the synagogue. And I heard that many of you feel connected to Bet Shirah through a meaningful experience with your children in the preschool, the warmth of Cantor Kula, or family history. You feel connected to Bet Shirah. And I heard the desire to grow stronger connections with one another. These are the kinds of connections we seem to be looking for. Listen to these testimonials. We get together every month, and we have for close to 20 years. When times are good, we smile and laugh together. And when times are tough, we cry together. Most importantly, we are together. Here's another one. When I suddenly lost my husband, I wanted to crawl under a rock and just disappear. But they wouldn't let me. They cared about me. They were there for me like family. Finally, everyone flew to New York to celebrate my son's wedding. That night, with our son starting his own life, we realized how blessed we were in ours. This is what I heard from people in a chavurah. Chavurah is Hebrew for fellowship. It's a small group that gets together to socialize, to learn, to connect. A chavurah can celebrate Hanukkah together. A chavurah can go to an art exhibit together downtown. And yes, a chavurah could even go bowling. When this synagogue was formed 25 years ago, chavurah was a big thing at Bet Shirah. And some of those chavurot are still meeting today, and I met with many of them. I shared a little bit of what I heard from those chavurot. And what I heard is deep, meaningful, and lasting connection. Last year was a year of listening. Let's make this year a year of connecting. Let's come full circle. Over 25 years ago, the Chavurah program was critical in the formation of our synagogue. And now, it can help us write the next chapter in our history. In an age where it is increasingly difficult to make connections, Chavurah can help build relationships with the synagogue and, most importantly, with each other. In the coming weeks, everyone will be invited to join a chavurah. Within the sanctuary, we are connected in prayer and faith. Beyond the sanctuary, it is my hope that chavurah will connect us in life. At Bet Shirah, a chavurah may choose to go bowling, but at Bet Shirah, nobody should go bowling alone. Like the Bible teaches, it is not good for us to be lonely. Lo tov heyot ha'adam livado. Through chavurah, we can create these very important connections. In addition to the chavurah program, our Tikkun Olam committee, under the direction of Cantor Kula, is expanding its work. It's expanding its work to include now the establishment of a Sunshine Committee that will be dedicated to visiting and supporting the ill and the elderly through phone calls, hospital visits, and lending a hand with errands. This group will be there to offer support. this group will make sure that instead of the deep sense of isolation felt by Rose in New York, our community feels support, care, and connection. Building a connection is best face to face, but sometimes that's just not possible. A sudden illness should not prevent a bubby from seeing her grandson become a bar mitzvah. A stroke should not keep a grandfather from hearing his granddaughter blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And an out-of-town business trip should not keep a father from seeing his daughter sing in a preschool assembly. Thanks to a very generous gift from Roberto and Betty Horowitz, these obstacles are no more. Beginning today, with these high holiday services, we are now streaming our services and our programs over the internet. If you cannot be here physically, you can still join us virtually. We can still connect. Connection with one another has always been a blessing of our people. After 40 years of wandering in the wilderness with the promised land on the horizon, a non-Jewish prophet named Bilam tries to curse our ancestors. Bilam stands on a mountain above the Israelite camp and prepares to destroy us. But when he looks down, he sees Israel's camp. He sees their tents. He sees the community. He sees people caring about one another, respectful of one another, and he sees the love that they share. When Bilam sees this, instead of curse the Israelites, he blesses them. House of Israel, your community is an inspiration. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. This blessing of Bilam's, is recited every morning from our Siddur, from our prayer books. It's a daily reminder of the importance of community. Ma tovu, how great it is when community comes together. Thousands of years after Bilam's blessing, we are challenged in our efforts to build community. When I went to visit Rose, every time that I saw the tears in her eyes, I felt pain in my heart. Rose's loneliness reminded me of my own struggle. Most of my friends had already been ordained, and they had moved across the country. My other friends were starting families, and I was still single. When back in my studio apartment, I felt something, a pain that was sharp and real, the pain of loneliness, the pain of isolation. And I tried to connect. For 1 month straight, every Shabbat, I attended services at a local synagogue. But nobody said hello to me. Nobody smiled. My last time at that synagogue, someone finally said hello. And then he told me that I was in his seat. And he asked me to move. On that Shabbat, seated in a synagogue of fellow Jews, I stood with them in prayer, but we did not stand together. I was alone. It's not good for anyone to be lonely Lo tov heyota adam livado, whether young like me or elderly like Rose. No person, no couple, no family should have to suffer isolation. Nobody should be left to bowl alone. These high holidays, when we stand together for Avinu Malkeinu, may this moment remind us of the possibility of connection. May it inspire us to dig deeper within while extending ourselves to those with whom we stand about. Like the Israelites in the wilderness who were blessed by Bilam, may our connections be our blessing. In the coming year, may the words of our prayer book be felt in our hearts and our souls. It is a blessing to stand together. Ma tovu. May the words of our Bible, it is not good for man to be lonely. Lo tov heyota adam livado. Serve as a moral compass on our quest to create connection. We can live the legacy of Cantor Morton Kula of blessed memory by allowing the connections that we make with one another affirm our faith in humanity. May it be a year of sweetness, a year of health, a year of community. May it be a year of connection. Shana Tova.